Well, this week on Dan Really Likes Wine, coming to you from the Cape Grace Hotel, have we lowered our standards beyond redemption as we open the show with an Australian? Well, he's an Australian new champion, some great local wine, some great independent wine, and a couple of those producers join us later on the show. But first up, from Ex Animo, David Clarke, lovely to have you on. You've been a regular on the show and a great friend to Dan Really Likes Wine, for which I am most grateful. You've also been a great friend to South African wine, and there's almost, when I listen very, very carefully, there's just that little hint of an Afrikaans accent that comes through from time to time. Is there a part of you that now feels South African?
My accent is a bit of a conglomeration of my native Australian, a little bit of Afrikaans from my adopted in-laws, my wife's family, and I think there might be a little bit of Southern British in there from my time in London. My wife, when we first met, she's baie Afrikaans. Couldn't understand a word I said for the first couple of months, and so she got really interested in me. Then it faded a little bit once she understood what I was saying. But yeah, so my real accent comes out after a few more of these, to be honest.
Yeah, you fell in love with the South African. You've also fallen in love with South African wine, and we've had many conversations around this. And you've got the perspective that time in the UK and time in Australia has given you on wine in particular. It's a very broad question, but is there a particular charm? Is there something quintessential about South African wine, the South African wine industry, that really got you enamored?
That's an excellent question, without notice. Well, I think a couple of things happened. Yes, I spent some time in high-level places around the world and came to South Africa, but I think my timing there was very, very lucky. You know, it was really when the revolution or the rebirth, the renaissance of South African wine was already underway. Like it's really started, the little eggs were starting to crack and little birds were starting to chirp. It wasn't full nests like there are now. So I think I lucked out in the fact that I had good timing and could recognize what was going on because it had already happened in other parts of the world that I was more familiar. But what keeps South Africa, I think, at the forefront or so exciting is the rate of change. I don't think there's anywhere else in the world where that would be still true. And so that gives you an idea about how quickly things are changing in South African wine if you start to zoom out just a little bit. From year to year, seems similar, but if you zoom out to 5-year brackets or decade-long brackets, it's a very, very different place from when we started Ex Animo in 2014.
You are ideally placed to comment on this because through Ex Animo you work with a wonderfully different and interesting and cool group of wines, and we've got a couple of them here.
Yes.
And I'm always interested when I give somebody in your position carte blanche to bring something along, what are you going to bring in? We've got 2 glasses of red here. What is the...
So the left-hand glass is this one here. Which is the Kier. I won't say it. I have to slow mine because I have to say the Kier. They go, no, what's that? Is that the Kier? So this is a Grenache Noir that's planted on my wife Jeanette's family's farm up in the Ceres Plateau. So this is about just over 1,000 meters, a kilometer above sea level. Bush vine, dry grown. It's apples and pear country.
Very gorgeous fruit to this, and it's exactly the kind of wine. It's a hot summer's day outside, away from the air conditioning we have here.
Yeah.
Pop this in the fridge for 10-15 minutes, and you've got a real summer delight.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to last very long until you open bottle number 2.
Yeah. As the wine as the vineyard ages and becomes what we think its potential is, and that's when the label will stop. We'll inverse it into white on black and then triple the price and then happy days.
You're retired in Barbados.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you're off to a cracking start. The other wine looks, from where I am here, to have something vaguely Italian about it.
Yeah. So this one is from Luca Ragno. This is his entry-level wine, the Dolcetto d'Alba, from 2022, current release in the country, from Piedmont or Piemonte, destemmed and then spends 90 days on skinned and submerged cap. So this is about 7 days. 90 days is 3 months is a very, very long period of time, and you would expect this wine to be super heavy, inky and dark, but because it's long and slow, it has this layers coming through on the palate. So I'll leave the bottle with you and you can taste the rest tomorrow, and it'll be not a completely different wine, but it'll have so much more little nooks and crannies to explore on the palate as it opens up. It's almost like when you're cooking a steak, like a really good piece of meat, Just bang, bang, get a nice crust on it, and let the natural, meat of the animal do all the work. But if you want to make a poiky, you need to do it for 8 hours, very slow and low, and put all the other flavors in there and build that flow of flavors at a time and not overpower anything. So that's more of the poiky style of making wine.
I love the fact that we've got an Australian on the show talking about poikies. We are
I love a poiky.
Cultural triumphs here. You've also given us an Italian, although we love South African wine. It is so important to drink wine from other places to give us a bit of context. And we'll get some more context on what you do with your producers, because a little later we'll have David back joining us alongside of Niels and Tyrrel Myburgh from Joostenberg. But for now, we'll get rid of the Australian and bring in the ginger pin-up from downtown Bod River. So, double dose of disappointment this week on Dan Really Likes Wine, unfortunately. First of all, the man is legendary for having the greatest Elton John Liberace-like shirts in the game, has come dressed like an accountant. And then secondly, he hasn't bought the wine he's most famous for, which is the Luddite Shiraz. All of that is at my particular request. And it was lovely to have you on the show, and welcome back. And we've got two wines which I'm really excited to try, but we do have to talk about this famous Shiraz of yours, because it is the wine through which most people come across this Luddite story, and this Shiraz that has become, David Clarke used the term cult a little earlier. It's one people sometimes try and avoid, but I think it does sum up exactly what Luddite Shiraz has become for so many South Africans.
No, thank you. I mean, that was the wine we started out with. One stage we foolishly romantically wanted to just make one wine, focus on making hopefully the best Shiraz we could. And I'm glad you used the word famous, because my wife says I can't say that, when we're doing tastings, that we are famous for our Shiraz, but I say that to them, and then I
tell her I said you can use globally iconic. That's how good this is, because I found this Shiraz all over the world, and it's been an incredible story, not just from the growth of it, the legend of it, but also the price. And this is certainly there's something to celebrate, I feel. Tell us what the price was when you very first bought it out, and then what we can now expect to pay for a bottle of Luddite Shiraz.
21 years ago, it was 150 Rand a bottle, and now it's at a very cheap 1,000 Rand a bottle. And I say cheap because I think I've never been scared to put the proverbial on the line and take wines at a 4 or 5 times the price from foreign countries and put it up against our Shiraz, because I think that's the way you've got to show that South African wines are worthy of these prices, and that they can stand up to those prices. So I've never been scared of that, and I really do think 1,000 Rand is a very reasonable price for our Shiraz. It's had a long history already. It's almost 25 years in the making, but we've released 21 vintages of it so far. And it comes from one vineyard. And with the drought years, some years there's only 6,000 bottles for the whole world. So on a scarcity value, it's pretty unique.
It is the headline act in the Luddite story. The Luddite doesn't just refer to a cool name. It is a lot of your philosophy. You arrived here this morning in a cart, having left 2 days ago from the farm, not though armed with the Shiraz, instead armed with a couple of whites, both of which I've had before. And straight away, as we jump into the white, the thing that people may well notice, and I'll pop it off here just in case you haven't, is instead of a cork, this has got a screw cap. Which is crown cap. My apologies, crown cap, which you've got on there. Tell me about that and how that works.
Yeah, so I've personally never been a fan of screw cap. We brought the Saboteur range out. I think 2015 was the first white, and I just felt it was for more early drinking. The Luddite is a bit more serious. This is for early drinking, and we wanted something fresh and cutting edge. But it is an unbelievable closure, works like a charm. And when you call a wine Saboteur, you can do whatever you like, actually. We bottle it with 33 mils headspace, so there's a little bit of oxygen to allow the wine to evolve. And I think that's important in a wine. But we do have a cork version. Same wine, just goes to the conservative countries that don't want a crown cap. And we've compared them. The 2014 was the first vintage we used crown and cork. And it's very hard to tell. The cork version has moved a little bit, showing a bit more fruit, but the under crown is pretty much stable and bulletproof, and it's a great closure. So, these are both new releases. They're being released. In fact, this is the first time they've been shown in public. So they've been released next week, and they're just hot off the bottling line and also off the labeling line. The Saboteur White is, we focus on Chenin and Shiraz with the Luddite. The Luddite label is 100% off our own fruit, whereas the Saboteur wine is made from 14 grapes from the valley. And the brief for the Saboteurs is we want them to be juicy, fruity, refreshing for the general wine drinker, but then also to have texture and structure for the serious foodie and wino. And we get that texture and structure with skin contact on the Chenin and the Voynier, but at time in barrel. So there's palate weight. This is only 12.3 alcohol, yet there's so much happening in the glass, a lot of peach, apricot, and then you get this slight pithiness from the skin contact and that texture. So you can drink it on the stoop or on the terrace and have a serious meal. Ticks both those boxes. And I always feel our watchword for the Saboteur is we want to have something for everybody in the glass. And I think that we nail it hopefully every year. And so this blend is Chenin led, as is the Saboteur Red is Shiraz led. So this is 73% Chenin, 13 Blanc Fumé, I can't bear to put Sauvignon Blanc on the label, and then 12% Voynier, and for the first time 2% Semillon. We got some Semillon given to us. We had a chance to harvest some Semillon grapes, and we looked at it, and it really fitted nicely into the blend. It gives it a bit more texture as well. So really enjoying it, and yeah, it's only been a bottle for a month, but it's already showing off. It's quite sexy.
Yeah, and I remember the first time you gave me this Chenin when I came out to visit you, and I do love getting out to the Bot Riviera and doing some exploration. And I was immediately taken by how it wasn't a wine that I was expecting, because there's certain characteristics that I think we subconsciously assume Chenin will have, that there will be. There will be fruit, there will be a breadth of expression, and this I discovered was suddenly a very linear wine, very different to what might have been. Is that continuing?
Yes, definitely. It's become a house style. It's got an unbelievable following. The one biggest problem is there's never enough to go around. A lot of people don't even know we make a Chenin. And you'll notice every bottle is hand numbered to tie in with the whole Luddite concept. We're going to pour it in this glass first, and then I thought you'll get a completely different perspective in the other glass. There's a salinity there. It's about palate weight. It's about mouthfeel. And it just keeps making you think the whole time. And depending on what day, it can go anywhere from smelly cheese to a wet dog to white fruit to honey to toasted almonds. Those sort of characteristics come out depending on the day, and just keeps throwing things. If you've got 20 minutes to drink it, you just literally, every time you go back to it, it keeps opening up. So it's very thought-provoking indeed. So in this glass, you're getting more green melons at the moment. A lot of the time, if you enjoy Islay malts, good old Lefroy whiskey, then those are the characteristics. There's saltiness that starts coming through. So it's just got texture from the skin contact, texture from the buttonage and barrel, and yeah, you can get lost in it very, very quickly.
And a real lanolin finish, that silk that comes through at the end. It's a glorious wine. If you're a fan of Luddite Shiraz, you'll know all about this farm. If you're not, get hold of it if you can. And when you're doing that, try some whites as well, including the one in a crown cap. Not just unique, pretty good as well. Cheers.
Cheers.
Had the path of my next guest taken its initial journey, then this could have been Dan Really Likes Law instead of Dan Really Likes Wine. But as the husband of a lawyer and someone who has tasted his wine, I'm very glad on both counts that he opted not to. Do you ever think back, Tyrrel Myburgh, to those days of working late at night through thick law books and wondering if law might be the right way to go?
Yeah, no, I don't regret my decision like at any moment at all.
I mean, I'm sure you could have got there if you wanted to, but it was probably always going to be wine in some shape or another, because this is very much in the DNA. Yeah. I think you're the sixth generation of Myburghs who are having great fun with wine.
Yeah, so sixth generation, and actually wine was made on the family farm before my family bought it. So we've got records dating back to the 1750s. Yeah, in like the old house of Pontac and Muscat that was made on the farm.
Extraordinary history to have.
I grew up with all this history, but it was quite, kind of interesting because my father and my grandfather actually sold grapes to the local co-op. At that stage, no wine was made on the farm.
Not the first guest we've had who has come to wine in a slightly roundabout way, tried something else, but realized, no, this is my actual calling. What was it, other than the sheer boredom of trying to learn Latin, that said, you know what, I need to head back home?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like one exact moment, but I think as I started enjoying wine, especially at university, I got to realize it's really fun thing to drink, and I kind of got the whole intellectual side to it, the vineyards and the origin of wine and the history of wine and the link to the soil. And then, when was it? I think in like 1995, I spent a year in the US just traveling and being away from the Western Cape and being away from the family home. It just kind of made me realize that there is something quite special about the Stellenbosch Paarl area. Yeah.
And getting to make a very wide range of wine. I was speaking to David Clarke from Ex Animo a little earlier on both the opportunity and the challenge that provides us South African winemakers with. There is so much we can make in South Africa, and every year somebody else discovers a Greek grape they want to throw in, or there's a Brazilian varietal we're going to try in the back of the Swartland. How do you manage that juggle?
Okay, well, I've kind of sticking mainly to two grapes. So the Chenin grape, which is, South Africa's oldest wine grape. I don't know if you know that, but it was one of the first varieties to be planted. And then on the red Syrah. So I have kind of decided on those two. But saying that, there is a whole world out there, literally hundreds of grape varieties you can plant. I'm trying not to get too distracted, sort of sticking to Chenin, but at the same time trying some new things.
What is going to happen, I guarantee you, is that 2 or 3 of those you make and you're going to bottle, and somebody's going to discover, and it's going to get 109 points from Greg Sherwood or 7.5 stars from Platter, and the whole world wants a wine you've only got 12 bottles of.
Yeah.
It is the curse and the fate of every winemaker.
Yeah. I've only got one barrel, but someone wants to order 500.
Exactly. Yeah. What you do have plenty of is Chenin, world-class Chenin, and that's what we're going to drink here. Yeah. Tell me about the name, first of all. Achteros, Greek.
Oh, difficult name. Die Achteros. So there's a saying in Afrikaans, Die Achteros kom ook in die kraal. So if you translate the word Achteros, it means the hind ox. And the saying in Afrikaans, Achteros kom ook in die kraal, means the hind ox gets there eventually. So even if you start off and you maybe not too good at something, you're undertrained or you need to learn, just carry on with it and you'll get there eventually. Don't give up. And this vineyard, which is the oldest vineyard on the farm, it's a vineyard planted in 1982, took us a long time to realize that it's our favorite vineyard.
There's a majestic citrus on to the end of it. But as you drink it, what's giving you that paternal glow?
I get like a little kind of quince and sort of like a baked apple or a apple pie character in the wine. So I really enjoy that on the nose. A beautiful textural kind of quality. That's what I love about this wine.
I'm extremely glad you didn't follow through with law, because otherwise I wouldn't have this glass of wine to drink this morning. And I also have some friends of yours who are with us. So we're going to be back in just a moment. And joining us, returning, is the big man from Pot River, Niels from Luddite, and alongside of him, David Clarke of Ex Animo. Hey guys, welcome back. And as we all sat down, David, there was visible pride as you were looking at the wine, looking at the guys. This is your team. You're the Sir Alex Ferguson of the late 90s, early 2000s Manchester United of wine. It's quite a collection of wine Avengers that you've assembled.
Very lucky. I mean, as we said earlier, I think I was the beneficiary of timing a lot. If I had come to South Africa even 10 years or 20 years earlier, the results would have been far different. So it was a timing thing.
Well and good to make terrific wine as you do year in, year out, if you can't actually sell it. And it is an increasingly difficult challenge because there are fewer people drinking wine, there's more competition. How do you settle on, right, this is going to be my route to market, this is the person I'm trusting to try and tell the world that I've got something pretty special to share?
On David's side, he's always thinking out the box. He's always thinking of different ideas to take it to market. There's a myriad of different ways to do it, and he's always trying to break the mold because you can't just keep doing the same thing the whole time and expecting to get different results.
Tyrrel, in terms of this group that you are part of, how close are you? Because at first glance, well, you're trying to sell wine, he's trying to sell wine. Surely you're competing against each other, and yet I never get that sense.
Not only Dan really likes wine, a lot of people really like wine. So we've got this shared passion, which just kind of is such a big part of everything we're doing. So we always get together, whether we sitting to the same restaurant or doing a tasting. It's like it's a whole bunch of friends like hanging out. It does help when you have a little sip of each other's wines every now and again as well. It's sort of, it gets the spirits going, the gees.
Does that gees extend, Tyrrel, to, you mentioned earlier you're growing Albariño for the first time.
Yeah.
Being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm doing this for the first time. Any thoughts, any ideas?
Yeah, totally.
But also, one of the pioneers of organic farming, I'm sure people ring you about that side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And like, holy shit, I don't know what to do. Well, I normally spray here or...
Yeah. Well, the organics side of things is so small that if we don't get help from each other, we're not going to get help anywhere.
Yeah, right. Okay.
There's so few of us doing it. So, yeah.
One of the things I found fascinating in my early days, Niels, in the industry was coming to a wine estate, not for a visit, but somebody had invited me to dinner or to lunch, and they wouldn't only show me their own wines. And there is a great generosity of spirit in terms of, hey, have you tried this one from somebody else? But also kind of fundamental to you to make sure that you understand what everybody else is doing, both for guidance and for a bit of a barometer.
As winemakers, we need to be tasting each other's wines. We need to be tasting international wines to see what's out there, what the trends are, to keep up with it, because there's a lovely term called cellar palate. So you get to the point that you only like your wine, and you get so involved and so blinkered that you just keep making something that you like. And after a while, you can't sell any wine because your taste is not the same as the public. And as we alluded to, the sharing of information, especially. Yeah, I still consider myself a young winemaker. Fortunately, I'm not afraid.
Very few others would, I'm afraid. Niels.
Granddad, I'll top you on the hill. I'll top you on the hill.
Bayer's Truter recalls your school days together very fondly.
But there is still this unbelievable sharing of information, which I don't think happens in any other parts of the world.
Yeah. But was it the same in the 1950s?
In the 50s, nobody's sharing, and you would never have done that, shown somebody else's. The more we share information, the faster the industry can move forward. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not sharing information with other winemakers and vice versa, because we need to catch up.
I think that's true historically, but I think it's changing now. So I just come back from Barcelona Wine Week earlier in the month, and there were certainly old producers who didn't want to talk about anyone else's wines, and sort of corral you only to their little stand. And then there was sort of the younger producers who were like, "Hey, go taste that one. Yeah, taste this one." And there's a real divide in it, and it's linked to the fact that the world is drinking less wine. Yeah, and it's like, well, we have to, as the wine community, push that and work together, or we will together we will conquer. Separated we will fall.
Yeah, last night I had a group of 12 French winemaking students at the farm.
That's right.
Yeah, and they just came around. We opened bottles, we drank, we lit a fire, and we fried some sausage, and it was like we were best buddies. Things.
And I love the fact that you're helping small, growing, developing wine areas like France to find their feet, which is most admirable of you, Tyrrel. Final word from the Ex Animo Emperor. You've got this wonderful portfolio of some great producers, despite the fact that numbers are dropping, that wine is facing challenges. Are you still genuinely excited about South African wine, where we are and where we can go?
Very, very excited. There's new varieties, the landscape's changing. Always, let's go changing very quickly, sometimes too quickly. Sometimes, guys who have been at the top of their game for 10, 20 years get forgotten because they haven't had a new wine for, 10 years or 4 years or 3 nats.
David Clarke, Ex Animo, Niels Verburg, Luddite, Tyrrel, Myburgh, Joostenberg. Thank you for joining me this week on Dan Really Likes Wine. Some exceptional Shannon, some exciting wines within the Ex Animo label, and some great stories. See you again next week. Goodbye.